did Mercedes' air suspension system come from? Most of you who are watching this video, again, who are like in the top tier of automotive savants, know what a Borgward is. And Borgward was a very well-known German company in the 1950s and 60s, founded by a man named Karl F. Borgward, who developed some great, small but very good cars. These included the Arabella, the Isabella, and by the way, the Isabella was fitted with a diesel engine. At the same time Mercedes was pushing out Ponton diesels, Borgward was pushing out a diesel Isabella. There were some other cars too, the Lloyd, the Hansa. They were small cars. These were very, very little two-stroke, two-cylinder cars. But at the time, this is what people in Germany needed to get around town, to deliver bread, milk, shoe leather, you know, beer. Just a small in-town vehicle. But Borgward wanted to produce an upmarket luxury car. So in 1955, 56, 57, they went to the drawing board because they were going to compete with the Mercedes Ponton and eventually what became the Fintail with the P100. The P100 was Borgward's last gasp. It was supposed to be an executive class sedan, so imagine about the size of a 220S fin car. Also with little tail fins, that was powered by a 2.2 liter six-cylinder engine that produced about 100 horsepower, maybe a little more. Does that sound familiar? It sounds just like a 220S to me. So Borgward felt that Mercedes' market share was too big and that if a superior car were offered, they would be able to get a percentage of that market share. And in 1959, when Borgward launched the P100, it was a modern unit-constructed car with an excellent and smooth inline six-cylinder engine that produced over 100 horsepower, but it had something else. It had a trick up its sleeve. And that trick was there was not a coil spring in the car. That means that if you got into a P100 and you decided that you were going to drive on some very bad roads or roads that required additional handling capabilities, this was the car. Forget about the fact it was carbureted and had a choke. That sucker had an air pump and it had airbags. Where have we seen this before? Especially in 1959. Can somebody tell me? It wasn't on a Cadillac, although it wasn't a Cadillac because we haven't discussed those on this channel, but the Eldorado at the time had air suspension. But this air suspension system was made by Bosch, and Bosch had developed it just for the P100. However, there were some problems at Borgward at the time. See, Karl Borgward did some things he was not supposed to do. He used slave labor during World War II, so all those people that Hitler didn't like were often forced to work in factories for free. Sounds worse than the flat rate system. And a lot of them were beaten, starved, mistreated, and if their bodies wore out or they failed on the job, they were forced to go die. You go die. They would just take them and kick them out in the cold and starve them to death or gas them or whatever. And so Borgward, because of this, had some issues, and he had some problems because his cars were starting to lose market share to the, not just in, superior Mercedes product, but to Volkswagen, to cars like Peugeot, Renault, Citroën. The cars were sold in the United States, but they were never strong sellers in the United States. They were here, but in Mexico, there was a pretty good market for them. In South America, there was a good market for them, but it just was not enough. And in 1961, Borgward was pretty much finished. All the tooling for the Isabella was sold to Mexico, where AMC set up their own manufacturing line to build the Borgward Isabella. The flat 4 engine was sold off to Subaru, And the P100's air suspension system was cannibalized by a consortium from Bosch and Mercedes. So the people from Bosch came in because they developed this system and they said, you know, we'd like to get some of our money back for all the time we put into the system, because they would get royalties on the sale of each car to pay for their investment. And Mercedes was in a position where they decided, hey, I think we should build a mid-sized car that has air suspension. But instead of making it the only offering on the 111, you could buy a 110, das kleine Heckflosse, the short or little fintail, or you could buy the medium executive class car that had conventional suspension like a 220S, or you could upgrade your 220S with fuel injection, get a 220 SE, or if you're like me and you love pain, you get a 300 SE. And the 300 SE coupe and sedan and cabriolet all had air suspension. And in fact, if you wanted a 300 SE, that was the only way to get one. You had to accept air suspension. The 300 SE still outsold the P100, but it was never the biggest moneymaker for Mercedes. Still, Mercedes began to offer the air suspension as a prestige option. And the prestige option became the de facto suspension system on the 600. With the 600 came increased height control. And eventually the 300 SE gave way to the 300 SEL W109, which also had the system, as well as the later iterations of 300 SEL 6.3, 3.5, and 4.5. And this system was in use at Mercedes until 1972 on most passenger cars, and of course the 600 used it until they allegedly wrapped up production in 1981. Today, this system is a very serviceable system. You can get parts through 600airsuspension.com. Martin, the owner of 600 Air Suspension, offers a full rebuilding program for all of your air suspension components. And the system, in my own personal use, has proven to be extremely reliable. So much so that I've elected to have 3 cars that have it, which I don't drive very much, but anytime I go look at the 2 that I've sorted out, the suspension systems are just sitting nice and high like they're supposed to. So, for all of you that were curious as to where Mercedes got this amazing system, it didn't appear out of thin air. It was pirated from a failing German company that tried one last time to make the most amazing car on the road and basically just helped Mercedes go to an even higher position in the market. Please like, share, and subscribe for more interesting Mercedes-Benz historical content. And if you have a topic that you are interested in, especially if you're a Patreon, let us know either in the comments below or through the Patreon portal, and we'll do a historical we'll do a video that analyzes the history of a specific Mercedes component. We'll see you guys in the future. Thank you.